coming to an end. So, all right. So, say what? Going on for 3 years. Okay. This morning we're going to be in Romans chapter 15 is what we're going to be reading. So if you want to grab a Bible or open up your app to chapter 15, go ahead and do that. So we've talked about how Paul's addressing the church because of the divisions between who? What? Okay. Well, it's obviously between the church, but well, half. Jewish and Gentile Christians. That's where we're talking about. Okay. Do you guys remember what the division was about? What? The law. Yeah, exactly. That's the main issue behind the division, is that the Jewish Christians have returned to Rome, and they're trying to tell the Gentile Christians, you still have to obey the law, and the Gentile Christians are saying what? Yeah. What are the Gentiles saying? Yeah, no more law. You don't have to do the law anymore. Jesus took care of it all. You don't have to do the law anymore. And so is Paul saying that either side is accurate? Yeah. I mean, there's elements of truth to both, but there are also, a lot of this is because of misunderstanding Christ and the law. The whole purpose of the law was to lead up to Christ. Christ doesn't come without the law. All of it functions together. So yeah, realistically, yay and nay would be the best answer to that question right there. And so that's what he's dealing with in chapters 2 through 8. The purpose of the law was to what?
To point out sin.
There you go. All right, good. Steal it right out of Kobe's mouth. Okay, probably better. All right. So it's to point out sin, and the law could do what with sin? There you go. Yeah, we're still cooking with gas. All right. Which will probably stink, but anyways. So it could point it out. The law did the wonderful thing of showing us, hey, this is God's holy nature. This is not. And so you need to live according to God's holy nature. But the law was only able to cover over the sin. It couldn't actually transform us. And so that's the whole role of Christ. And it gets back to the reestablishing a proper understanding of Christ and the law. Because Paul doesn't want the Gentile Christians to talk bad about the law, but he also doesn't want the Gentile or the Jewish Christians to sit there and over glorify it and say that it's all this stuff that it's not intended to be. So, so that issue alone gets into this issue of God's faithfulness. So if God's saying that the Jewish Christians, that there's some of these guys that have been pulled out because they aren't really obeying God anymore, then how does that stand with God's promises? Is God still truly faithful if he's going to reject some of his own people? And we notice that Paul sits there and specifically says, yes, of course he's still faithful. God was greatly faithful to his people, but his people are the ones who obey him. And so when you've got a whole group of people who are just like totally ignoring God, they're not really his people. And so that kind of gets into the next question about God's selection presents an issue with who belongs in the family. And that's when Paul gets into the arguments about predestination. And it's not an Israel of blood, it's an Israel of obedience. It's an Israel of faith. We said that Abraham was credited as righteous because he did what? He believed. He believed God. He believed God and he put his belief into action. And so it wasn't just a matter of, Abraham saying, oh, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, this is great. He believed God before he had the law, before he and his family were circumcised. And so it's not a matter of circumcision or law that puts us in the family of God. It's faith. And so that's kind of what leads into chapters 11 and 12. So then Paul's correctly established that the foundation is Christ. He's laid that, and so now that they've kind of gotten back on that central position again, he's arguing that they're supposed to be a family, and then they need to start acting like it. As families, we might bicker and such. I mean, my brother and I, older brother and I, don't exactly have the best conversations or whatever. But usually, it's just like most people. I mean, Weston, how many times do you get into an argument with Dub? A lot. Okay, but you still love him. Yeah. Okay. Javen, how many times do you get into an argument with Seth?
Not sure every
time. Knowing Seth, I have a hard time believing that. Yeah. Hudson, since you're here, how many times do you and Hayden get into an argument?
To what?
Into an argument?
Not that much.
Not that much anymore? Okay, that's good. Raise your hand if you actually did have an argument with a sibling this morning. Okay. Raise your hand if you've had an argument with a sibling in the last week. Yeah, I know you and Reagan did because I saw you like tackling each other on the steps or whatever at camp. So, hey, Hayden. So yeah, so I mean, it's one thing to have disagreements. It's one thing to sit there and get frustrated with one another. It's a totally different thing to sit there and totally write each other off and to get angry and such. So yeah, so we need to start acting like it. Scroll down to my notes here. God's people should embrace diversity and unity. We talked about how, as a church, we need to grow. We can't just sit there and say, well, we only want people who are like us. We only want people who are not going to be really outgoing. I mean, Abby's really extroverted, and so she had spent all week last week at the house on her own with a 3-year-old. And so I get home after spending a week with a bunch of teenagers and adults and people in general as an introvert. And so my first desire when I get home is just let me get back into my bubble for a little bit here, and just let me isolate. And Abby's like, hey, and wanting to just keep talking. And I had to finally say at one point, I was like, I need you to calm down a little bit for me for just a little bit. And I know it's been a rough week for you, but for just 1 minute, just a minute. And so, we may want to sit there and go, well, I'm an introvert. And I would like a whole bunch of introverted people around me because they understand that if I'm not talking to you, I don't want to talk to you. I want to go back to my place and just, listen to music or watch a movie or do whatever else. As an extrovert, you might sit there and be a kind of person that goes, well, I want to surround myself with extroverts because, I don't like when somebody doesn't want to talk. Okay. But God's point is that we're a family and he's given each of us skills for a purpose. There's a reason that we need extroverts and introverts in the church. We need people that are outgoing and willing to go out there and reach out to different people. We also need people that are willing to just chill. And there's nothing wrong with either side. There's all kinds of different things that we need to embrace as far as the diversity in the body, and we need to encourage that, and we need to be ready for that with our communities, that we need to be bringing and encouraging diversity, personalities, preferences, all this kind of stuff. We need to be able to be okay with that coming in. And we said God's people need to be able to look past petty arguments because of love. And so Cooper talked last week in Romans chapter 14 about how there might be stuff that's like, oh my goodness, they used red grape juice instead of black grape juice. That is unscriptural. Did you know they used Great Value grape juice instead of Welch's? They used Welch's in Jesus' day. How dare they? Okay, that's a petty argument. That's stupid. Okay, get over it. If somebody all of a sudden shows up to church and they're like, I can only find the white grape juice today, is that going to be okay? Is it our goal to sit there and go, sinner? No, it's grape juice. Get over it. Okay? This is the kind of stuff that's just like, okay, does it deal with Christ crucified, born as from a virgin, sinless, does it deal with Christ and that? If it doesn't, we can probably move past it. Okay? And so that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. And we do it not just because of the fact that it's a stupid argument, but because we're doing it because we love each other. Okay? And so sometimes we have to address it, yes, but sometimes we also have to be able to we have to be willing to say, okay, clearly this is something that's really a big issue for you. Um, there's really no reason for it, but because I love you and because this is that important to you, I'm going to go ahead and say, just all right, we'll go with it for now, okay? And it's wisdom that allows us to have the ability to discern what's petty, what's not, what's something that's important to stand up about, and what's not, okay? So, Reunited, and it feels so good. I cannot say that title for this lesson and not hear that song. Reunited.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can we start on this side?
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Not had that question before, but absolutely we can. So
But I thought there was 16.
there are. We're going to be doing Romans 15 and 16 this week. Like you'll have some of 16 in your reading challenges. But I mean, since Romans 16 is basically just, and I want to thank this person, and I want to thank this person, and this person, and this person, I figured we could pile up the two and move out of Romans because we've been in there for a while. So, okay, so Romans 15, let's read through. We'll start with Kobe, 2 verses each. And before we actually get started with that, I just want to remind you guys, be listening to the text, be watchful of the text. And so if there's something in there that just speaks out to you, be, feel free to say it. And it's not going to always happen. And so if there's not, that's fine. But if there is, don't feel afraid to acknowledge the fact that some portion of this text, whether you read it or somebody else does, has affected you differently. So take.
We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Each of us should please our neighbors for their good, but build them up.
For even Christ did not please himself, but as it is written, the insults of those who insult you have fallen on you. For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope.
May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind towards each other that Jesus Christ had, so that with one mind and one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Accept one another, then, just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. For I tell you that Christ has become a servant of the Jews on behalf of God's truth, so that the promises made patriarchs might wait. Is that right?
Yeah, patriarchs made to the patriarchs.
Made to the patriarchs might be fulfilled.
And moreover, the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy, as it is written, therefore I will praise you among Gentiles, I will sing the praises of your name. Again it says, rejoice your Gentiles with his people.
And again, praise the Lord, all you Gentiles, and sing praises to him, all peoples. And again, Isaiah says, the root of Jesse will spring up, one who will arise to rule over the nations. The Gentiles will hope in him.
The God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that you may abound in hope through the power of the Holy Ghost. And I myself also am persuaded of you, my brethren, that ye also are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, able to admonish one another. My Bible is in a weird version. I was like, why are they saying different words?
All right. 15.
Okay. Yet I have written you quite boldly on some points to remind you of them again, because of the grace God gave me. to be a minister of Christ Jesus to the Gentiles. He gave me the priestly duty of proclaiming the gospel to God so that the Gentiles might become an offering acceptable to God, sanctified by the Holy Spirit.
Therefore I glory in Christ Jesus in my service to God. I will not venture to speak of anything except what Christ has accomplished through me in leading the Gentiles to obey God for what I have said. Amen.
By the power of signs and wonders, through the power of the Spirit of God, so from Jerusalem all the way around to
Yeah, Illyrium. Yeah, that'll work.
I have fully proclaimed the gospel of Christ. It has always been my ambition to preach the gospel where Christ was not known, so that I will not be building on someone else's foundation.
Rather, as it is written, those who were read about me will see, and those who have not heard will understand. This is why I have often been coming to you.
But now there is no more place for me to work in these regions, and since I have been longing for many years to see you, I plan to do so when I go to Spain, and I hope to visit you while passing through, and you have to assist me on my journey after I have enjoyed your company for a while.
Now, however, I am on my way to Jerusalem in a service to the saints there for the
Macedonia?
Macedonian and
Achaia?
Achaia
Sure.
were pleased to make the contribution for the poor among the saints in Jerusalem.
They were pleased to do it, and indeed they owe it to him. Whereas the Gentiles who shared in the Jews' spiritual blessings, they owe it to the Jews more than their material blessings. So after I have completed this task and have made sure that they have received this contribution, I go to Spain and visit you on the way.
I know that when I come to you, I will come in the fullness of the blessing of Christ. I appeal to you, brothers, by our Lord Jesus Christ, by the love of the Spirit, to strive together with me in your prayers to God on my behalf.
Verse 31.
That I may be delivered from those in Judah who do not believe, and that my service for Jerusalem may be acceptable to the saints, that I may come to you with joy by the will of God, and may be refreshed together with you. Now the God of peace be with you all.
All right. Hey. All right. So, is there anything in that chapter that you guys noticed that stood out to you?
What we said again multiple times.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. And again, and again, and again. Yeah. When you're reading through Paul's stuff, I mean, because Paul is so uh, knowledgeable about the text, and remember that they didn't have a New Testament in his time, so they just had the stuff of the law, the prophets, the history books, and all that stuff. So I mean, he was really knowledgeable in all that. So I mean, Paul consistently quotes the Old Testament, and he uses it a lot. I mean, like we just saw there, and again, and again, and again. Um, it's that reason that some people thought for a little while that Paul was the author of the book of Hebrews, because Hebrews like goes deep into the Old Testament. But I mean, Paul always addresses himself in his letters, so it's not likely Hebrews was Paul. But that's beside the point. Uh, but like even just when he doesn't quote it, he's still referencing the Old Testament, and he's still using all that. So very knowledgeable in it. Anybody else? Verse 5. What about it?
I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the spirit of unity and understands as you follow Christ Jesus.
Anything in particular about it stood out to you?
Oh, no, just
That's perfectly fine. Okay. Sometimes we don't know exactly why in the moment why a particular passage sticks out to us. It just does. I think sometimes it's kind of the same way with music. That We don't know why a song sticks out to us until we understand that song or that passage more, and then as we do, we are like, oh, that's why that connects with me right now, or connected with me then. Um, so yeah, but it's the work of the Spirit right there that's calling out to you. And so if you do notice that, if you do notice that a passage is calling out to you like that, even if you don't know why, take the time to explore that and just dive deeper into it. Okay? So, anybody else? Verse 1. We who are strong. Okay. Anything about that?
Yeah, it stands out to me because so many people in life notice other people's weaknesses,
Okay.
but instead of trying to help them, they make the other people feel bad about their weakness.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, we have like. Do any of you guys go to the site Fail Blog? No, I mean that's an old thing. But I mean, there's like a whole website dedicated to videos of people just epically failing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, YouTube is just like a big center of it now. Fail Blog might not even exist anymore because it used to just be a collection of them, but now you have YouTube and you don't have to worry about it. But so yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, our culture pretty much glorifies people like biffing it hardcore. I mean, we were just talking about the girl at camp that they got video of that. Like you said, she's Scorpion. I mean, just like face planted and yeah. I mean, there was a one of the counselors that was like walking into the building one of the times, and I was watching her and I was like, she's gonna bite it, she's gonna bite it. And she wasn't paying attention because she was looking back and she was talking to somebody. Bam! Right into the separating pole. That was pretty good. But I can't say much because I was too busy looking at my phone one time and I ran into one of those little trees and I was like, oh, that was great. So okay. So yeah, I mean, our culture focuses on all this negative stuff, and like Elani was mentioning, I mean, we need to be willing to look at people and be like, okay, you messed up, or you have this opinion, or whatever. I love you, and I'm gonna still love you through that, anyways. Okay, and that's actually point number one. To truly love our Christian family, we must be patient when they are weak. Okay. And like we said, there's obviously some stuff that we're gonna have disagreements about in the church that we're just gonna be like, okay, that's kind of ridiculous, or that might be flat out wrong. Okay. Like if somebody comes up to you and says, well, I think Jesus was a great guy, but I don't necessarily think he was the Son of God. I mean, is that something that we can tolerate in the church? No, that is absolutely false. Okay, if somebody tries to continue teaching that, then we as the church have to say, okay, that's wrong. And if you want to continue believing that, then you need to go somewhere else because that's not Jesus. Okay, Jesus. I mean, there's no purpose in all of this unless Jesus was the Son of God. If he was just another dude, then it doesn't matter. Um, there's obviously some stuff that we can just kind of agree to disagree on. But when somebody starts trying to say the carpet's got to be burnt orange in order for us to be able to worship, okay? Yes, specifically burnt orange, like almost rusted. Okay, all right. I mean, that's one of those things where you're just kind of like, okay, that's pretty ridiculous. Okay. And we can go through a bunch of different examples. I think Cooper covered some of them, and it's important to note here that I mean there's a reason that Paul is kind of repeating the main message from chapter 14 as he's going into chapter 15. Because remember Paul's logical. He's kind of building through his arguments and so forth. And so yeah, there's a reason that he's kind of flowing that in there, and he's still going to be making the general argument from 14 into 15. So, and it's also important to remember too that when Paul wrote these letters, in fact, when most of the scriptures were written, they weren't separated by chapter and verse structure. Psalms would probably be the closest one because those are actual psalms, and so it's not just like a chapter 118 or anything like that. It's actually Song 118 or Prayer 118. Uh, so, um, so yeah, Paul's basic statement that he's been making in chapter 14 and now re-emphasizing here at the beginning of 15 is the mission of the church is too important to get caught up in the stupid stuff. Okay? There's literally people out there that are dying not knowing Jesus. Sometimes because we're too busy arguing about the color of the carpet or whether or not there should be a podium up in the front or if the table's in the right spot or if communion's served from the right direction. Okay? The mission of the church is too important for that nonsense. And so that's one of the things that he's getting at. Did anybody else have any others? Since Aeolani's just kind of tied directly into that, we went to that one. But did anybody else have anything else from chapter 15 that they caught into? Okay. So the next thing then is verses 2 through 3. So spouses do special stuff for each other just to do something special for one another. Okay. Every once in a while, I get Abby a card and take it to her, or I'll just get her some flowers and bring her some flowers. And it's not because I'm sitting there thinking, if I get her flowers, maybe she'll get me an Xbox game or something like that. Okay. It's because I love my wife. All right.
You're getting an Xbox game. I don't know, but something more than that. That's way worse.
And so I do that kind of stuff just because I love Abby. Okay. We made this commitment to be with each other for the rest of our lives, not just because I thought, oh, hey, she's an okay person. I did it because I think the world of her and I want to be with her the rest of my life. And so I want to continue doing special stuff for her. Okay. And so Paul's kind of trying to make that same argument here that the church should be doing the same thing. Okay. We don't need to sit there and wait for somebody to do something good to encourage them. All right. We've got this prayer request board over here. Do we have to wait to pray for somebody until something has happened? Can I just pray for Kobe just because I want to pray for Kobe? Okay? You don't have to wait to pray. You don't have to wait to sit there and go up to Eli and say, dude, you're awesome. Even when you state the obvious, you're awesome. Okay? You don't have to sit there and wait to go over to Reagan and say, Reagan, you're amazing. And you work with horses, awesome. You're fantastic with horses, and that's great. Okay? Don't wait. And the reason that you guys each have cards with your clipboards, and if you don't have a card, then there's cards over there. I want you to write a card to somebody this week. Encourage somebody this week. Actually, give it to somebody else in the youth group. And if you want to take one and give it to another friend and just say, hey, I just wanted to say I was thinking about you this week. Not because I'm concerned about you. There's nothing weird. Just I wanted to say I appreciate you. And so just grab one of those cards and at least give it to somebody else in the youth group this week. Okay? And not the person that you're sitting next to right now. Okay? So this is not going to just be, oh, hey, I'm sitting next to, Hayden and Aiden. Just go, you want to just pass cards real quick so we can be done? Yeah, okay. Okay? That's not how this is going to work. All right? You've got to give it to somebody, and it cannot be the person that you're sitting next to on the couch right now. Now, if Aiden decides, I actually do want to say something nice to Hayden later this week, or just whenever, he can still give Hayden a card, just not right now. All right? So we need to just do special things for each other. We need to just appreciate each other because we're a family. All right? We need to just be willing to sit down and do stuff like that for one another. Okay? Verses 5 through 6. So Paul says, may the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind toward each other that Christ Jesus had, so that with one mind in one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so he's appealing to the church to be unified. Now he's at the end of this letter. Why is he talking about unity again?
Because it's important.
Because it's important. What did this whole book start with, or letter start with? Unity. Were they unified in the beginning? No. So Paul has moved from a church that is divided to getting them to see the true nature of Christ and the law. He's gotten them to understand that they need to be a family. So now at this point, he's gone from a church that's divided to, okay, we're back together again. We need to be united. We need to act like a family. We need to be together. And now he's moving past that and saying, great, now you're united again. You're good. Stay united. Don't just book it now. Don't just let somebody else all of a sudden show up and introduce some other ridiculous argument to get you guys to break up and fight and everything else. Now that you've gotten this far, don't waste it. Live united. Focus on your unity. Jesus is about ready to go to the cross in John chapter 17, and he starts praying for the church, and he says, let them be what? Pretty much. He says, let them be one as you and I are.
Two.
Heresy. Come on, Patrick. No, he says, let them be one as you and I are one. Okay? And so it's important. It's important for us to understand that Christ is getting ready to go to the cross, and he specifically says, I want them, the biggest thing that I want them to remember is unity. The fact that you and I, God, are one. I want them to remember that too. Okay? And so that's the biggest thing that Paul that Jesus leaves with them in the last prayer that he does for them before he goes to the cross, anyways. And so there's that. In verse 7, he says, just as Christ accepted you. Okay? So we don't just accept one another because it's a good idea. Okay? One thing that we can see in our world today is that there's a lot of people that just sit there and go, well, there's all these different ideas. Just go ahead and open it, Riley. It's not a big deal. There's all these different things that people notice about the Christian culture that they're like, oh yeah, we should do that. There's all these people that go, well, it's a good idea for us to go out and serve one another. Let's just go ahead and do it. And then they sit there and want to say, well, see, I can serve others and not have to go to church. I can be nice to other people and not have to go to church. I can be accepting of people. I don't have to go to church for that. But see, there's a difference. There's a difference in the reasoning behind it, because we're not just sitting here and saying, I'm accepting Hayden just because I think it's a good idea. Okay? I'm not sitting here and saying, well, I'm going to go ahead and accept Hayden just because, we should all do that. Because at the end of the day, if there's no other deeper connection than just the fact that I should accept Hayden, if Hayden does something to really irritate me, just really tick me off, do I have any further reason to still accept Hayden? Without Jesus, do I have any other reason to continue to accept Hayden? No. If I don't have Jesus in my life, and I go off and I'm serving somebody, but now I've served to an extent that it's going to start really eating into my pocketbook, am I likely to still do it?
No.
The reason that we do it is important. We don't just accept other people because it's a good idea. We accept others because Christ accepted us. Okay? And so when that becomes the case, even if Hayden does something to me just brutally wrong, okay? Just decks me in the face, and then when I go down, he kicks me in the stomach too, okay? and then just starts laughing about it. And he starts, just doing all this other different stuff and just absolutely making my life miserable. Do I still accept him if I have Christ? Yeah. Okay. Verses 8 through 9 and verse 26, Paul is emphasizing the unity that should exist between Jewish and Gentile Christians because of the blessing. Okay? Abraham got promised three things. What were they?
The land, descendants, and
Blessing. Yep. That was it. So, yeah. Okay. So Abraham is promised three things if he's obedient and faithful to God is land, descendants, and blessing. All right. Through Christ, the Jewish Christians have been able to fulfill the blessing part of their promise because they can actually sit there and go to the Gentiles of the world and bring them into God's family. They're fulfilling the blessing. And now, because of the blessing, the Gentile Christians are able to experience God's grace and mercy. So they're united in the blessing that they've received and that they were supposed to be participating in. But it's not just that. It's the blessing that they have to encourage one another. It's the blessing that they have to continue to go out into the world and be a blessing to the world around them. And so they're united by the blessing. Okay? And so this unity of the blessing is what is going to keep us together as well. When we're more focused about encouraging one another because of Christ, when we're more focused on getting the word out to the community around us about Jesus and the good news that we can be freed from sin and grief and everything else, then we're focusing on something more that's bigger than us, that's more important than us, and is going to be able to help us understand how to trump all the small issues that are just stupid. All right? So to wrap up Romans, as God's people, we need to consistently show love to our church family as well as the world because of the love that has been given to us. All right? So that's it for Romans. You guys will have the reading challenges this week to go a little bit further, but as far as our classes are concerned, that's it. The next week we're going to start in Ephesians, new way to be human. And other than that, today's Father's Day, so spend time with your dads or your family. No youth activity tonight. Excuse me. Next Sunday, we're going to have a church board game night, and then we'll have s'mores and Devo after that in the back, assuming it doesn't rain. Now that I've said we're going to have s'mores. Right? I just talked about s'mores last week and we got rain, so that was fun. So, anyways,
I just want to warn you that there's a forecast this week for lots of rain.
See, there you go.
What you can do is set some candles in here and then bring the marshmallows and stick inside. Hey, you do have that heater.
That thing's loud. Do you remember how loud that is? Anyways, all right. So, all right. Second bell's rung, so I'll let you guys go. You guys are awesome. I really, really love you guys. Appreciate every single one of you. So.
So I'm going to be here tonight, and I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks.
Okay, where you guys headed?
We're going around.
Awesome. That sounds awesome, man. You guys gonna fish?
Oh, yeah. A lot of fish.
Good. Hey, you guys keep me posted on the fish that you catch. All right. All right.